It's on now, ma. It's on now. Thank you. Hello, we are on now. Hello. We are on, ma. Thank you. Please come and bring fan.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Who is that?
Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Can hear you. Hi, Folu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good evening, ma'am.
I've been trying to reach you on phone.
Oh, sorry. Network.
Oh, okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
I'm going to meet
Oh, good evening, Dr. Folu Agoy. Good evening, Dr. Oyinsan.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. All right, sir. Is Dr. Afolayan available now?
Yeah, she's available. She's here right now.
Okay.
You can see Bose Afolayan.
Okay. So can we start?
Yeah.
Or should we just wait a bit?
We've lost some time.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to apologize for the lateness. It was due to some technical faults beyond our control. Please bear with us. We apologize. I'm excited to be here this evening and excited about all the amazing discussions we'll be having this evening. I welcome you all to this virtual event hosted by Women Writers Committee of PEN Nigeria to celebrate the International Women's Day of 2020. Our topic of discussion this evening is women and women writers in the age of COVID-19. As we all know, COVID-19 is one of the hottest, if not the hottest topic of discussion globally today. I'm your moderator this evening, and my name is Bolatito. My task here is simple, and without further ado, I'll go straight to the business of the day. Let's welcome the chairperson of Women Writers Committee of PEN Nigeria, in the person of Dr. Bose Afolayan, to take the welcome address. Dr. Afolayan, please welcome. We welcome you to the event. Kindly take the welcome address.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can hear you.
Thank you very much. And welcome. Even though we had a little hitch. Thank you very much. I present my address. The President of PEN Nigeria, invited speakers, members of PEN, friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen. The time we live in is a very challenging one, which is why we're having this program virtually without the usual fanfare that is the celebration of women all over the world. Although the coronavirus reverberations have been felt first in Europe and North America, and lastly in Latin America and Africa. That the virus has affected the world as it does can be traced to our humanity. It is the whole essence of who we are that has made the virus most deadly. Indeed, we are constrained by the kind of time that we are in. I will explain. As humans, we socialize, we hug and kiss our loved ones, we shake hands and embrace our friends and kin. It is, unfortunately, it is in this seemingly harmless show of affection that the virus thrives. We are not robots, we interact, but that was the old norm. And as they say, we are now in the new normal. Governments in all countries introduced lockdown, hand washing, and social distancing, among many other measures. Schools, businesses, churches, and mosques are closed down. What makes us social beings is removed. We become caged, literally. No room for self-expression. Once you sneeze, it elicits a prayer. Now it is a cue to run for dear life. So says a poet. The sense of community that we shared and cherish is an invitation to sickness. No movies, no theater, no fans at games. We are cramped in our little space, coming out only when it is absolutely necessary. Women more than men are affected. Now they have to do all the house chores. House helps cannot come in. They cook the meals and then wait in the process. No spare time to reflect. Working from home and attending all the chores can take its toll. The pandemic has exposed couples to themselves. They see each other frequently. They are in each other's faces because they are grounded, so to speak. They either bond by sharing the chores, playing out their strengths, or erupt in regular bickerings and squabbles. Women have been seen to suffer more in this setting. In that space, tempers are short and quarrels can erupt without warning. Women get beaten and suffer a lot of trauma. For women writers, it is a great opportunity to write and write. The aloneness helps to create stories, either from personal experiences or from public and social experiences. As it were, in the midst of everything said, it must also have been a rewarding time for women writers. It is on this note that we warmly welcome everyone to sit back and enjoy the reflections of our honorable speakers on this special occasion of the celebration of women. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bose Afolayan, the chairperson of Women Writers Committee of PEN Nigeria. Thank you. I'll be introducing our next speaker, our first speaker, who will be giving us insight into the plight of women and women writers in the age of COVID-19. She is an amazing woman. And when I say amazing, I mean it. She's a special woman. And one of the reasons why she's special is the great passion she has for helping people achieve their set goals. She's a distinguished writer and a brilliant teacher, a winner of several awards, and a professor of literature. She currently teaches at Alex Ekweme Federal University in Ebonyi State, Nigeria. She's a fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Letters and a former vice president of Nigerian Center of PEN International. Please join me this evening as I welcome Professor Akachi Adimora-Ezeigbo. Good evening, welcome, Professor. Can we unmute her, please?
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here, and I want to thank Dr. Afolayan for inviting me to speak. I also want to thank PEN President Folu Agoy. I thank all of you. I understand we have like 10 or 15 minutes. How many minutes?
10.
10.
Yes.
So I tried to put my thoughts together because I wasn't sure I would be fast enough to say all I want to say. So I just put it together in a short paper, which I'm going to read, if you don't mind. As said before, the theme, actually the United Nations Women Campaign theme is Choose to Challenge for this year's 2021 International Women's Day. But the main theme is Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in the COVID-19 World. This theme recognizes women's efforts worldwide to bring about a more equitable world in which everyone's future, including women and girls, is secured, especially following the ravages inflicted on the global community by COVID-19 pandemic. All over the world, women's voices, especially those in leadership positions at all levels, are heard, demanding respect for women's rights and the inclusion of women in decision and policy making in their countries in all areas of life. Women also want equal pay, equal opportunities, and a swift end to all forms of violence against women and girls, especially rape and domestic violence, which seem to have increased in this era of coronavirus pandemic. You agree with me that all the time when we tune our television or radio, we keep hearing news of women being raped or kidnapped or violated at home, or even relations raping their women. This is terrible. And these are issues that women are dealing with in this terrible period of coronavirus pandemic. Women everywhere, including in Nigeria, are contributing to the well-being of their communities as frontline workers in the COVID-19 crisis, as health workers and caregivers. They are risking their lives to ensure that those around them are protected from the virus or are cared for when they get infected with the virus. To the best of their abilities and capabilities, women take good care of their families and provide nourishment to them at this most difficult time of the pandemic. Now, I want to talk specifically about women writers. I've been talking about women generally. Now, I want to narrow it down to women in the cultural production area. Now, apart from contributing to the home and to other sectors, women have also been at the forefront dealing with the trauma and bearing the economic and psychological burden created by the ravaging COVID-19 pandemic by engaging in cultural and socio-political sectors as writers, entertainers, artists, traders, teachers, and guidance counselors. It could not have been easy at all for women. Finding the time to write has always been a big challenge to women, who usually are responsible for taking care of men and the rest of the family and their needs. Women take charge of the domestic front, involving taking care of the home and children. In addition, there are continuous, unending busy spells in the home front. Women are also in full-time employment as workers who do almost the same work men do in the public sector, in the academia, and in the churches and other religious organizations. According to the Pulitzer-winning journalist and writer, Bridget Schultz, women's greatest enemy is lack of time to themselves. The woman writer suffers this most. Immersed in her several roles and duties, the woman has little or no time at all to write. This problem of lack of time is heightened in the era of the pandemic. Unemployment, lack of capital to start a business, and poverty are the lot of women, including writers today in the world. The pandemic has further eroded the inclination or capacity of many women to write because there are other pressing needs and issues they are dealing with. Under such circumstances, writing becomes an unaffordable luxury. for many women. However, it is heartwarming to note that some women have devised ways of keeping their writing going by squeezing out time to write. Thus, they have contributed to short story and poetry anthologies. Some have even written extended pieces such as novels, plays, and poetry and short story collections and essays. I mean, I can mention a few of them. There are many, but I just want to mention a few. Our chairperson, Dr. Afolayan, has come out with a collection of essays, which is very commendable. And I know other writers like Betty Ige, Ekaite George, Bunmi Oyinsan, Chinyere Okuna, and so many others have come up with things they have published even within this pandemic between 2020 and 2021. And this is very, very inspiring and commendable. And we want to recommend that every woman, no matter how busy you are, you should squeeze out time to write, please. And these things can be published either in anthologies or on blogs or on the internet. You can even publish in the newspapers, in the electronic and print media. These are avenues through which we can publish. Or you can even keep writing when the environment, the atmosphere is better, then you publish. But do not waste time by keeping idle or stopping yourself from writing. Even if you're a poet, write one poem, even if it's a week. And that will help to keep your writing going. I have also been reliably informed that there are quite a number of manuscripts that are awaiting publication, written by women. I've discussed with a few publishers and they've told me this, that women have submitted manuscript for publishing. And I feel very delighted about this. It is highly commendable. We should continue to write and make our voices heard and our perspectives on life known in all their diversity. Our world has become reconfigured by the pandemic. So we must embrace the new normal and adapt fully to today's realities by engaging in new forms of writing, participating in Zoom meetings and webinars to air our views and connect with our peers and other kindred spirits. We must assert our presence online, participating in online workshops, seminars, and conferences to sharpen our intellect and develop our skills. Our writing matters. Yes, whatever women write matters. Let us write about justice, gender equality, peace, love, accountability, honesty, and integrity. These are areas we can explore in writing. As women, we must play our roles well and join the men to create a better world and a better future for all of us, for all of humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. Over to you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Professor Akachi Adimora-Ezeigbo. That was a very, very detailed presentation. Thank you so much. She talked about respect for women's rights, equal opportunities for women, and we can't leave women behind. We all have to work together and support one another. Thank you, Professor Ezeigbo. I'll be calling on Dr. Bose Afolayan to take the citation of the second speaker.
Thank you very much. Our second speaker is Olatoun Gabi-Williams. She has many years of experience delivering spoken and written word content around literary culture, advocacy, and education. She has delivered numerous assignments on television, on radio, and on live performances and platforms to advance her dual mission to promote an appreciation of good books in Nigeria and Africa, and also to promote child literacy, education, and welfare in Nigerian institutions. Our activities span She has worked on Channels Television on Sunrise program, on NTA Channel 5, AM Express, Close Floor, City Lace, and Smooth Radio's Smooth Review. She is the director of Selena Ventures Limited and Selena Travels Limited. We would like to hear from her reflections as a writer and is a lover of books during this pandemic. Thank you, Ma. The floor is open to you and for you to speak.
Thank you very much for that fulsome citation, Bose. I'd just like to make a slight amendment. I've had assignments on the various television stations. I was never a staff of any of the television stations. I've had assignments and appearances throughout my my return to, yes. Thank you so much. So yes, well, hello everybody, and I'm very happy to be here. I told Bose that I was going to be talking very personally because this pandemic and the lockdown has basically made me very introspective. I think it's probably done the same to lots of us. It's given me time, and as Professor Akachi Ezeigbo said, it's given us time to actually do things that are pressing and that need to be done. And the first thing that it gave me an opportunity to do was to settle down and decide how I was going to tackle the lockdown, how I was going to tackle my memoir. Before lockdown, you're just too busy running around. Running around doing what? I think a lot of us have had a chance to ask that question. What exactly were we all running around doing? I realized I wanted to finally focus on writing a memoir, and I had to decide how. And I decided to look at different aspects of my life and see which aspects, if I were to project them into the wider community, could be most useful to engage with, by a readership. And so I did the most obvious thing, which was to settle down and write a memoir, an essay-length memoir on my reading history and how it shaped my development. And in my case, it was moving from Eurocentrism to an embracing of my own Africanness and the expansion of my mind as a direct result of reading a plethora of a wide range of African literature, and many of them published here on the continent, and how that made me a passionate advocate, not only of African literature, but of African indigenous publishing. So that was very important for me. So I wrote the memoir, around 8,000 words, and that was published by Brill. It's actually my first academic publications published by Logos. So I also started children's development is very important to me. And for 14 years, I ran a children's charity called Sponsor a Child Nigeria, and very child rights focused in a very specific way. We were developing libraries in orphanages, etc. So I decided to merge that work with my literary work and started Border's Sustainable Development Goals Book Club, which engages with children on book chats, inviting them on my show to talk about community development issues, to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, the themes related to no poverty, all kinds of problems besetting the world, and how these children think we should go about changing them. So yes, that is what my own lockdown has been about, finding a way to reconcile the different elements of myself into something I think would be useful to the wider world. And yes, so the memoir and then the SDG Book Club, which has now evolved into, I'm now an organizer of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Book Club Africa chapter, which is, seeks to introduce the principles of development to children ages 6 to 12 years old. So yes, reconciling myself with myself, all the bits and pieces of myself, bringing them together. So it has been an incredibly fruitful lockdown for me. It's tragic out there for so many people. But as my mother says, Olatoun, you have been in Goshen, and I thank the Lord for this. And it's wonderful to be able to share this with all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for bearing it all. Thank you for sharing your personal experience with us. Thank you. And for the laudable project, the Book Club for Children. Well done. Thank you very much. At the end of all the presentations, we'll be having discussions, questions, and taking comments. So kindly use the chat box on your screen to send your questions and comments. Thank you. We'll be moving on to our third speaker. Our third speaker will be giving us her views on the topic of discussion this evening. She is dynamic and extraordinary. I call her an extraordinary woman because of her love for humanity, a theater arts practitioner, an alumnus of Faith Foundation Entrepreneurs Business School and Harvard Law School. She's an astute TV, film, and stage producer in the entertainment industry. She has initiated and participated in several television programs, projects, and movies, including Forever, Keeping Faith, 30 Days, MTN Project Fame Season 2, and Project Young Edutainment Initiative. A former chairman of the National Association of Nigerian Theatre Arts Practitioner, Lagos Chapter. Please join me as I welcome the legendary Eki Eboigbe. Welcome, thank you for joining us this evening.
Good evening. Good evening and happy Women's Day to all of us.
Good evening.
Thank you so very much for that introduction. I had to smile when you said legendary. Wow. Thank you so very much for the invite. I'm passionate about books. I've always been growing up. I always enjoy reading. But of course, as life will have it, I went into the production aspects of it first and foremost. I went to production, producing, like you already said, movies, documentaries, and been writing, of course, short scripts for movies. But later on in life, gathering experience and trying to build up my passion, I actually now delved into writing. I've written 2 plays that have been published for children, one for children 5 to 12 years old, and one for young adults, 12 to young adult age, Okikiro, Love of Country. My writings actually tend towards development, adding, inspiring and adding value to, of course, first the human being and then the society. I've also written some poems. I will just go, I'll come back to the topic of today, which is talking about how the women writer have fared during COVID. My contribution also will be a bit personal, because first we were all locked down, so that means we were kind of quarantine, all on our own, no movement. It gave me really the time, honestly, the time to actually delve more into writing. And during the COVID lockdown, I believe I was able to write 10 poems, actually, discussing publishing later. But the COVID actually inspired me to write more, for basically more poems. And my poems again were from my experiences, from happenings around. Also, like you read, I'm a part of the Child Protection Network. So once in a while, even though we were on lockdown, I was called out to go and we do advocacy, to go and talk to families that were having challenges in being able to handle the lockdown situation. So there were a lot of sometimes there were a lot of quarrels with families, and once in a while, the Child Protection Network called me out, especially if it was happening around my locale. So actually, I could do that also. And what I did also was advocate using my creative experience. Some of the times I took notebook because of course I always have my notebook and pens with me to engage the families to be. But of course, after trying to provide some kind of solution to whatever concern that they were having. So basically, for me, COVID, gave me a whole lot of time on my hand to write, gave me a lot of time to be able to experience what other people were going through, because some of the time we're kind of like detached from what other people are going through. We're just, like one of the speakers said, we're just moving on, and we're just doing our own thing, and we're just distracted with our own concern. But with COVID, a whole lot was exposed, and this actually, to me also, was an opportunity and a platform for content to actually write, to write, to pen some words down in my experiences. So COVID-19 has come for now to stay. We're hoping that we get out of it, but I think it has, in a way, brought some opportunities, if you ask me, to what our lives, used to look like and what is, and how we can kind of like manage the whole situation. For women, creative women, I want to use the word creative for creative women, particularly also ones that are actually that have a whole lot going, and I'm saying that I mean that have to run the homes, or that have to go to the workplace also. It's always a whole lot of challenge, but it's always been a whole lot of challenge. But as women, the way we've been created by the divine, I always like use myself as an example. We're multitasker, we're managers, we find a way around to create that kind of like the time and to manage all of the things around us. So for me, COVID situation gave me an opportunity to, I can use the word, was like a muse for me to actually create a bit more. I used to like write just for production, but I was able to go into poetry also for COVID. So for me, COVID, gave me that content period. So basically, that's really what I have to say. Thank you so very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution to the entertainment industry, and well done on your advocacy work. Our last speaker, please, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. Our last speaker, but not the least, will be giving highlights on the topic of discussion this evening, women and women writers in the COVID-19. She is a phenomenal woman. Apart from being a distinguished writer, she's a lover of children and very passionate about imparting knowledge. And reason why today she's a co-founder of 2 schools in Lekki, Lagos. She studied at St. Mary's University and York University, Canada, She has published novels in addition to several short stories in anthologies, and a book for young readers. She has also written stage and radio plays. She currently spends her time between Canada and Nigeria. Please join me this evening as I welcome Dr. Bunmi Oyinsan. Thank you, Dr. Bunmi Oyinsan, for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much for having me. Penn, Nigeria. I especially want to thank Folu Agoyi and Bose Afolayan for extending the invitation to me. Yes, I'll just dive in. I'm also going to be reading. But anyways, let me just start by saying I'm very excited to see a lot of faces I haven't seen in a long time. Hi, Karen. Hi, Akachi. Hi, Faith.
Hi, Bunmi, welcome.
Hi.
To say that we're living in the most interesting history-making times has become a cliche. Only a handful of people in living memory can say that something similar to the situation in which we find ourselves today. By living memory, I mean, of course, that there are very few centenarians or super centenarians alive today who witnessed the 1918 Spanish influence, which is perhaps the closest, although more horrific event to this current pandemic. I doubt if we have any writers alive, women or men, who can share their experiences of how they navigated that phenomenon and how it affected their creative endeavors. However, one of the advantages of being a writer or practitioner of the creative arts is that your work outlives you and will be accessible to people outside your immediate family. As such, we have examples in the works of writers like Catherine Ann Porter, who was born in 1890 and who died in 1918, who would have been about 18 during the Spanish influenza. Her story, Pale Horse, Pale Rider, has been described as an exceptional depiction of the suffering caused by influenza. Like women elsewhere, and has been acknowledged here by all the other speakers, COVID-19 has forced Nigerian women to re-envision and reinvent their daily existence. There's no gainsaying that the COVID-19 pandemic is disproportionately affecting women's lives in ways that it does not affect men. However, a lot of women writers in the so-called developed world will admit that COVID-19 has forced this prolonged isolation on them. But because writing itself is something that is done in isolation, writers here have been most productive, and the sales of their books have gone up because of the isolation has given more people time to read. So I guess this demonstrates another way in which privilege works. While women from poor countries might have things in common with women in the economic South, our struggles are colored by privileges. Now, thinking about women and women writers in Nigeria underscores for me just how complex the times must be now in Nigeria. When I try to factor in the various challenges, additional burden that have been mentioned here and so on, economic, social, political, let me illustrate. For most women, it has meant taking on additional childcare, care of the sick, the elderly members of the family, and all of these on top of their domestic chores without NEPA, poor internet access, and all the other problems that we suffer from at home. Some have had to give up their sources of income or simply been unable to earn income due to the prevailing circumstances. And of course, reports about domestic violence are particularly worrisome because women have found themselves in most cases living with their tormentors. So unlike women elsewhere, they have had virtually no support from their governments. I guess the challenge for us as women writers is how do we ensure that Those distinctive voices and experiences of women and girls are captured in the telling of the story of this pandemic, because we know that the story of every woman and girl is vital. So how do we hold on to our proverbial pens when everything around us seems to compel us to put them down? The first thought that came to mind when I was invited to address this forum was that it would be too simplistic to approach the subject from a prescriptive position by enjoining us to commit to making the time to write, make notes, possibly keep a journal, or with a smartphone nowadays, keep voice notes. The primary goals of these would, of course, be to try and capture as much of what is happening now as possible, with the intention of finding the time to turn them into that sometimes elusive opus. I mean, that masterpiece that we all plan to write. I'm pretty sure most of you are already doing that, doing these things, so you don't need me to point you in that direction. However, I believe that these kinds of commitment to finding ways to capture or record moments that strike us can also go a long way in helping us as women to cope with the new normal of our existence. Keeping notes of events, even something as basic as trying to record a summary of one's daily life, which women have always done in one form or another, is a kind of coping mechanism. Journal entries have been known to serve as a way to help women evaluate challenges that they encounter during the course of the day, for as long as women have been able to write. This is why the main character in one of my novels, Three Women, who only had a smattering of learning, devoted so much of her time recording her life starting in the early 1920s when she was a teenager. A record of our thoughts and momentous events during this pandemic will also serve as markers pointing to changes from what was to what things have become. I've had cause to read scraps of daily thoughts that I kept about events, and found myself astonished about certain experiences that I went through. Now, I think we can draw a lot from the literature of the 1918 influenza, as well as writings that are not overtly about the influenza. Elizabeth Outker documents in her book, Viral Modernism, the Influenza Pandemic and Interwar Literature, how the 1918 flu is embedded in a lot of modernist literature, like Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway. She illustrates how, like the virus itself, which is unseen, it is presented in modernist literature like a hidden specter and has to be teased out. In other words, when reading most modernist literature of the era of the Spanish influenza, the presence of the flu might not dawn on the reader directly. Quite apart from the fact that the virus responsible for the Spanish flu, like the coronavirus, is unseen, its occurrence coincided with the First World War, which was another historic incident. Although the war claimed fewer lives than the flu, it has nonetheless been written about over and over again for the simple reason that it presented people with physically identifiable enemies who could be seen and more easily described. But this is not to say that the virus and the way people experienced it is absent from literature. Outker suggests that the influenza primarily informs the mood of the literature about it. This is because it was such a vast, ubiquitous spectral trauma which permeates the literature, but is often hidden. She explains that in some of the literature, the war appeared as the focus of the narrative because people had been fighting the war even before the Spanish influenza. The characters were familiar entities, and stories about them could be plotted. The flu, which did not have a tangible form, could be discerned mostly in the way it made everything worse, without solidifying into a separate historical event like the war in the literature of its time. Also, Outcome points out that, posits that because of the spectral nature of trauma, it is usually something that people do not recall directly, but diffusely. Try and visualize it like an invisible smoke. As such, it is often sensory things in an environment or particular situations which trigger it. I find a distinct correlation between the First World War, the influenza, and the situation in a country like Nigeria today. For instance, right now, without being aware of it, we are imbibing things about COVID-19 and this so-called new normal, alongside other wars that we're contending with. I'm sure those of us from the economic south, and in this particular case, Nigeria, can see a similarity with the spectral nature of the pandemic when weighed against the palpable devastations inflicted by undeclared war, or dare I say wars, going on within our borders. What is war if not the absence of justice, peace, security of life and property? What is war if not the inability of young Nigerians to look to a future in which they see a path to the attainment of their full potentials? What I ask is war, if not the situation which young Nigerians find themselves in, which they cannot ask to be allowed to live and move freely in their own country without the threat of being killed by uniformed men whose salaries are being paid by our taxes. Are we not at war if we are held captive by a callous, nonchalant, thieving, nonchalant politicians and leaders? As such, just as we're grappling with these various undeclared wars, our senses are being primed, storing up the spectra of COVID-19 in our subconscious. It could be a couple of years from now, or even longer, when face masks won't be seen everywhere. Won't be seen everywhere we look. And it might be something as simple as seeing a doctor or a nurse wearing one, or the smell of something as simple as sanitizer that will unlock these memories stored up in our brains and which have become part of our emotional lives. We do not all need to, the point I'm trying to make is that we do not all need to set out to write a novel, play, or poem specifically about COVID-19. The spectra of this virus is being captured and embedded within the moods of our writing and should continue to do so. It is part and parcel of these strange times. On a personal note, I have set myself the challenge of using this period to find ways to ensure that after the pandemic, the world will not go back to being business as usual. I am focusing my energy through my writing, which is of course fueled by the spectra of this virus, to demonstrate that a world in which the majority of people from the economic south will continue to suffer under the tyranny of so-called globalization, which only benefits the developed world and their collaborators who have installed themselves in leadership positions in countries like Nigeria, is untenable and unsustainable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Bunmi Oyinsan. You will agree with me that Dr. Bunmi Oyinsan gave us a more elaborate insight into the plight of women and women writers in the age of COVID-19. She also shared coping strategies in the age of COVID-19. Thank you very much, Doctor.
You're welcome.
And so now we'll be going into our question session, discussions, comments. I'd like to take the first question, and this will be directed at our first speaker. Please, if you have questions, comments, kindly put your questions and comments in the chat box, and we'll read it out. My first question to Professor Ezeigbo. First as a woman and then as a writer, what would you consider as your greatest achievement?
You mean during this COVID time or generally?
Generally,
Okay.
generally, because we have writers, we have aspiring writers in the house as audience. So they want to hear from you as an experienced writer. What has really been your greatest achievement and how can they also learn from that?
Well, I think that what I consider to be my greatest achievement as a writer and even as a woman is the mentorship roles I have played. Because I can tell you that I have made a difference in the lives of many women. Not only educated women, even women who are not educated, women from my community. I consider that as one of my greatest achievements because it gives me so much joy and happiness that I have been able to make an impact in the lives of people.
Okay, thank you very much. For our young writers and aspiring writers in the house, you've heard from Professor Ezeigbo, mentorship is very important. So you need to learn and you need to seek knowledge from those who have been there before. The second question, I'd like to address this question to our third speaker, Eki Eboigbe. How have you survived as a female film producer in an industry dominated by your male counterparts? We're celebrating International Women's Day today, and we're saying that women should be given equal rights. How have you survived in that industry?
Okay, thank you.
Is she? Okay, thank you.
Hello, thank you. How have I survived? Being the fourth female chairman actually of my association, Nigerian Association of Theatre Practitioners, of course you'll be surprised that actually a group of men that came to me and said, Eki, you need to be our chairman. We have been watching you, we've seen, we know your antecedents, we know you can, be able to come on board. And as a woman also, very importantly, they added that as a woman, you can be able to navigate and get the association moving. This was coming really at the time when the association was having structural challenges, and practitioners were not really interested and saying why they needed to be a part of an association, a structured body that will help them be able to get the kind of voice that they needed to have, particularly in the polity of government and even with their own development. Basically, when I came in, I was able, using of course all of my experience and expertise, to make sure that we had a lot of capacity training, because remember, industry, particularly still the creative industry, I would say, is kind of like a free for all. You have a talent, you can act, you can write, you just believe that you are now a trained expert in that industry, because we still really do not have that much of regulations going on. Yes, we're talking, we're presenting papers and making presentation at the government level, but we still really don't have the structure. So I would really like to say thank you to the men in my association who sought me out and said, okay, you can do this. And And when they came up, I'd asked, I did say, it's not just about telling me and urging me to go and be the chairman because I'll be the first female chairman. I'm not interested in all of the title. I'm interested in working, and I believe that the work actually will be, a teamwork. So I did ask them that I really should have their support also, because their support was needed also to make all of the programs and all of the visions and objectives that I have to put forward to work. So I would say it wasn't really much of a challenge, but then again, like in any aspect of life, you know that, well, you have one or two persons that will want to throw in a bit of the spanner. So, but I was able to manage that, and we were able to have a successful tenure during my tenure as the chairman. So I might just say I was a bit lucky. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next question will be to Olatoun Gabi-Williams. Thank you for your presentation earlier on. I would just like to ask, what motivates you to write? What inspires you to write? Hello, please, is our second speaker still there? Okay, if she's not there, we'll just move to the next question.
I hear you.
We can't hear you.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself.
Unmute
We
yourself.
can't hear you.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Is our second speaker in the house, please? Olatoun Gabi-Williams, please, are you in the house? Okay, I don't think she's available. So I'll just direct the next question to Dr. Bunmi Oyinsan. You spoke extensively on the plight of women in this COVID-19 era. I'd just like to ask, what advice would you give women, to find time to write or read when they've had to take on more unpaid care work? Most women now are now teachers because their children, they're in school at home. They have online school at home, so they've now had to take on the job of a teacher. They are carers at home because they need to take care of their husbands, take care of the children, and take care of the elderly ones in their home. So how would you advise women to find time to write and also to read when they've had to take on more unpaid care work since the COVID-19?
I actually think I treated that when I was in my delivery. Honestly, I don't believe in prescribing, solutions to people. Each individual will have to find what works for them. But I'm also aware, having looked at the ways in which the Spanish influenza, was navigated by writers along that time, that it doesn't really matter whether they are writing during this period, whether or not they are writing during this period. Yes, it's a good thing if people can take a bit of time off, or can find a bit of time off to make notes, about things that they find significant and things like that. But even if they don't, it is impossible to live through this period and not imbibe the ways, the changes, the things that are going on around us. And like I said, because the virus is not a tangible entity, that does not mean that it's not informing our world views. And when we sit down to write, whenever it is, we're able to find that time to write, you know, and we used to set a story, you know, during this period. It's going to color the way in which we treat things. You understand what I'm trying to say? So if I do know that it's a heavy burden that women are having to, and that it might actually be unrealistic to expect people to be as productive now as they were pre-COVID or as they would be post-COVID. You know, if they're able to find the time, let them make the notes, voice notes, journals, and things like that. You know, but all of these will come out. It can come out in the mood of what you write, you know, in the difference, in the ways in which, for instance, you would describe a street in Lagos during COVID period, you know, compared to the way, for instance, you would describe a street in Lagos pre or post COVID with all the jams and things like that. I don't know if I'm making sense. But the point I'm trying to make is that I cannot prescribe. You know, individual women will find their ways of coping, of keeping what is important, and they will find ways, and they should be able to find ways of bringing it out in their poems, their plays, their novels, or what have you.
Okay. Thank you very much. At least you've given us an expo, the streets of Lagos during the COVID-19. So if anybody wants to write a novel, that's a topic for you, the streets of Lagos during COVID-19. So I hope that in the next 6 months, we'll see a book that will be published saying the streets of Lagos in COVID-19. Thank you, Dr. Oyinsan. For now, I'd like to take you back to Dr. Afolayan. Please, can you help us handle discussions, and if there are questions in the chat room, because I can't find questions in the chat box.
Okay, I can see that Olatoun Gabi-Williams is back. I don't know if you can ask her the question. She's back online.
Okay, our second speaker, Olatoun Gabi-Williams. Thank you for coming back. The question I was going to ask you was, what motivates you, what inspires you as a writer? Because I know we have a few aspiring writers and young writers in the house, so I would like to ask, what motivates you to write?
I like the idea of taking my own personal pain and using it to engage with the world around me, because I want people to feel less alone in their pain. I think a lot of pain is exacerbated by the feeling of, I'm the only one in this position. I'm the only one in this boat. No, you're not. You share this pain with so many people all over the world, and those to come. And writing, it's like, entering into the fellowship of everybody, of suffering, bringing everybody into the fellowship of human suffering, bringing everybody into the knowledge of the human condition. This is not about you, it's about being human. I don't want people feeling bad about themselves because they feel a certain way. I want them to realize that this is the human condition. And the fact that we're not talking about it doesn't mean we can't write about it. So yes, I think so. I just want people to feel better. Every age brings its own issues. I have my own particular issue. I'm a third culture child, what they call third culture children, where we don't really fit in anywhere. We're citizens of the world and we are accepted in the beloved, and I want them to know that they're loved and that they're special and unique and they are beautiful the way they are. And that's what I try to do with my writing. I always, even if I talk about pain, if I present pain, I always try to do something that involves epiphany, involves a celebration of who you are. My favorite poem is Love, is it Love After Love? Or something like that by Derek Walcott, when he said there's going to come a time where you're going to look in the mirror and say hello to yourself. And I want to help people move to that place.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for telling us to be original in our writing. Thank you very much. Like I said, I'll be giving it back to Dr. Bose Afolayan to help us with discussions. If we have comments in the chat box, I can't see any comment here. I don't know if there are other comments.
Dr. Folu Agoy has a comment,
Okay.
and it's to all the
Okay,
speakers.
Dr. Folu Agoy.
It's to all the speakers. He says, in your literary engagements during the period of the lockdown and beyond, how have you responded in your writings to the socio-economic crisis and upheavals in your country besides the pandemic? That question is for all the speakers. How have you been able to respond in your writings to the socio-economic crisis and upheavals? I don't know who wants to start with that, answering the question. Shall we start with Professor Ezeigbo, please? Prof?
Yes.
Thank you.
I quite agree that, and in fact, when Bunmi was speaking, I was telling myself, when she was saying you imbibe or ideas about this COVID-19, which you could explore later, I think that we should not all be thinking that we must write about COVID-19 about this time. You can also write about other issues. We have so many things traumatizing us in Nigeria today, things that a writer can write about, because when we write, it's usually things that affect us, things we affect our emotions, our feelings. That's what we write about with passion. So we can write about kidnapping or these other evils surrounding us. We can even write about love during the time of COVID. So we don't have to limit ourselves to only experiences about COVID. You may even have a great story you wanted to write 5 years ago and you didn't have the time. Now, if you have more time during this COVID time, because there are some people really who have time in their hands at this time. I know somebody who told me that he has written 3 books during this COVID, when some people can't even write a line. Another person told me, I just can't write at this period, I can't. So people differ. So you have to look inwards and know about yourself. You can write about other subjects. It doesn't have to be about COVID-19. What I said and what I stressed, I said it before, is for you to keep busy. One thing about writing is the more you write, the more your ideas flow. But sometimes when you just ignore writing for a year or 6 months, you find that you are terribly behind. So what I'm saying is, let us keep writing. It doesn't have to be about COVID-19. Let's write about other issues so that we keep busy. There are people, every day they sit before their typewriter, their computer, because even if no ideas come, they sit there and before long something comes. So we don't even have to be in the mood to write. Sometimes we can even force ourselves to write by doing the things that are necessary, like just bring that your laptop or computer, face it, sit down and think, and ideas will come. So let us keep writing. Thank you.
Can I come in? Because I have to leave.
Yes.
I totally agree with everything Akachi has said, and for me, what this pandemic has also brought to the forefront of my consciousness in ways that had always been there but had never really been core is these differences, this thing that we keep trying to celebrate as globalization, and the ways in which the privileges play out on an international level. I mean, look at even the fact that privileges are being played out even in the way in which vaccines are accessible. There are countries in the developed world where a distinctive percentage of their citizens have already been given the vaccination, whereas countries in Africa and other poor parts of the world are still struggling to even start, treating the most vulnerable. So for me, that's what I've been focusing on, and it might sound hypocritical, but because I live in the economic north, this COVID period has been very, very productive for me. I've written about 5 children's illustrated books during this period. 3 or 4 of them have already been published. 2 are waiting for publication. I actually started my Sankofa Pan-African history channels during this period because I have the time to read. I have the electricity to just sit in this my tiny studio and record and things like that. But I do know that there are people at home, who have probably more brilliant ideas, who are more fertile, when it comes to creativity than me, but who do not have who are constrained by other things that have made it difficult, for them to be as productive as they can be. And this is why, like I said at the end of my presentation, post-COVID, the world cannot continue to be run the way it is. And as much energy as I have will be going into it. I'm looking at it from a Pan-African point of view.
Thank
Very
you
much. There is another question. There is another question.
Can I say something, Bosede?
Okay,
Very quickly.
please.
Olu asked about what we were writing apart from the pandemic. During the pandemic, we had all the George Floyd Black Lives Matter protests. Then we had our protests here, NSAR's protests here. And I remember a viral video of a young European man talking about Black lives mattering even less in Africa. And I started writing something focusing on peace, justice, and strong institutions, which tied into that idea that Black lives matter less here, and that would we have the same fallout, the same beneficial outcomes of our protests as the Black Lives Matter protests are enjoying in the global north, because good things have come out of the Black Lives Matter protests in the global north. So I did start writing something along those lines, during the pandemic. Sadly, it's not finished yet, but I've got quite far in writing about that.
Thank you very much. There's a question from Damilola. It says, with the economic cost of COVID-19 and the redirection of funds towards solutions, do you believe there will be enough sponsors for literary prizes this year? Money is going into vaccine, production of vaccines, food. Do you think there will be enough sponsors for literary prizes this year? Anybody can answer the question, please. Would somebody help us out? With the economic cost of COVID-19, the funds going to medicine and all of that, do you think there will be enough sponsors for literary prizes?
Okay, I would like to take that, Dr. Afolayan. This is Dr. Ladele from Lagos State University.
Thank you, ma.
Okay, yes, it is one of the resonances of the pandemic. There'll be some cutting down of the grants that are available, the fellowships that are available, and so on. Even travel itself is already slightly hindered. For instance, if you don't have the COVID vaccine certification, you may not be allowed to travel out of your own space here in the South, in the economic South, as Bunmi likes to describe us. Well, that's okay. But, we should focus first on the quality of writing that is produced first, so that we would not compromise on the writing in the name of getting the grants. So let us focus more on the quality of the writing, on producing what we can within this period, post the pandemic, and so on. And there are several metaphors that also and different trajectories that would come up in the process. We haven't seen the end of it. There are several other things that are yet to unfold. So if we, however, stay focused on the demands of writing and writing well, then we are going to be making a greater impact here first. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Loladele. That was very good. Thank you. Would anybody like to comment on that too? Professor Ezeigbo, you have won a lot of prizes that we know. I know others too have won, but I'm aware of yours. So do you think these prizes will even go to women?
I quite agree with the previous speaker, Lola. I think the best thing is for people to concentrate on writing well. There'll be time for prizes, and there'll be prizes. I believe that many of the funding organizations, I don't think they have withdrawn their prizes. So the important thing is to write that bestseller or that classic that will win you that prize. That's what I think.
Thank you very much.
Whether it's academic writing for fellowships, grants, or whether it is a creative writing for literary prizes, whichever. Just be the best you can be in writing your proposals or your novels or poetry collections. I believe that when, like my people say, a good wine sells itself. You don't have to make noise about it. Just produce that wine and people will buy it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As this program was going on, I got a message from a colleague, a younger colleague of mine, who just told me he won a fellowship to go to Germany, and I was very happy. It's the quality of the proposal he wrote that won him that fellowship. And I would want to suggest also that we keep writing and keep on writing, and one day we'll win that award. I want to hand over to our moderator, who has been doing a great job for the closing ceremony.
Thank you very much, Dr. Afolayan. We've all learned that there's a silver lining for COVID-19. So it's not all just bad news. So let's make use of the ample time we have now to keep writing and keep writing. Dr. Ezeigbo has said, continue writing, just keep writing and keep writing. We'll be rounding up now, and we'll be handing over. I'll be handing over to the president. Sorry. I'll be handing over to the president of PEN Nigeria to give the vote of thanks for this evening. Dr. Agoy, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think I can. Good evening, everyone that's been around this evening to celebrate with women, to celebrate womanhood, and have useful, productive discussions on how we've been able to cope during the time of the lockdown, and even in these times of the in the country. But I really appreciate everybody that's been here, especially our special guests, the moderator of the program, who got the invitation just about 2 weeks ago to anchor this program, and she didn't really hesitate in coming around, and she's been very wonderful. Thank you very much, madam, for coming around. The chair of Women Writers Committee of PEN Nigeria, I want to thank you for a job well done, for all the struggle, the stress, and all of the efforts, and at least for putting together this colorful event. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Prof. Prof, thank you very much for coming around. We're afraid that you weren't going to be around because of your other engagements, but luckily something happened, and then we are happy to have you here to add a lot of color to
Thank
this.
you, my able president.
Thank you, ma'am. So we are appreciated for your efforts. You keep saying you are a new member of PEN Nigeria. Well, you've been very active even within this few months of your membership. You've been very active, and for which we're very grateful to you. Thank you for coming around. And
Thank you for
Eki, we are very grateful to you too for coming around to add your perspectives and your words of experience to this great discourse. Thank you very much. And the other members of the audience, the press, Damilola and the rest of them, we're very grateful. We've all been able to learn one or two things. First, that even the fact that even without having any idea what to write, you could just sit down in front of your computer and somehow the inspiration would come. And that's really works. At least something is one of the takeaways that I've really got today. Well, the celebration definitely continues. At least the PEN International actually pays a lot of attention to the issue of diversity, especially with regard to gender, to various phenomena having to do with that. So it's one of the reasons why we are very passionate about things about women, about girls, about minority groups, about minority languages, for which PEN really stands for linguistic rights, besides the promotion of literature and literacy. So the story continues. PEN is an association of writers, or at least everybody that has to do anything to do with the words, whether in writing or in speech, anybody, academics, musicians, journalists, lawyers, everybody that, even bloggers, welcome to join PEN. And at this junction, I want to say thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. We are delighted to have you, and we are delighted that you stayed with us through. Thank you very much. We'll call you again.
Thank you very much, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.